Congresswoman, thanks for joining us. You're
My
a regular
pleasure.
at our
Good
events.
morning.
The big news, you've been in the news recently. You were selected to give the Spanish language response to the State of the Union. I'm not going to ask you what you're going to say, but can you give us a little bit behind the scenes of how that comes about, how you got the news? It must be quite exciting.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me, and thanks to everybody here in the audience. Really appreciate that you're taking the time to be with us. And I want to just preempt, I have like a serious sore throat, so I may pop in a lozenge. So just, it really is an incredible privilege, the opportunity that I've gotten to deliver the democratic response in Spanish to the President's State of the Union address. And the way that it happened is that we asked, and
Is that right?
yes, we asked.
And now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Speaker and Senator Schumer decide this, correct?
Right, and so to be honest, I thought it was kind of a long shot because, I'm a freshman, and there's a zillion people who would be as appropriate or even more appropriate to deliver the response. But, we put in the request, and I'm certain there were probably a lot of requests to sort through. But I think it's appropriate, especially because El Paso has been ground zero for so much of what happened in 2019. I mean, as you all know, on August 3rd, a domestic terrorist drove to my community, and he confessed to doing so in order to slaughter Mexicans and immigrants. And so we were at the center of the national epidemic, the gun violence epidemic, and our country's hate epidemic as well. Mm-hmm. And we've been the testing ground, unfortunately, for so many of the president's anti-immigrant policies. In fact, yesterday we learned, I don't know if you all have heard of MPP, Migrant Protection Protocols, or Return to Mexico, where asylum seekers who are in the American asylum system are being returned to a country not their own, Mexico, to await their court date. And prior to yesterday, our government, at the very least, had some smidgen of compassion and didn't send non-Spanish speakers to Mexico. Well, that changed yesterday, and they're sending Brazilians now, people who don't speak Spanish, who also don't have family, friends, anywhere to stay. So, we have unfortunately borne the brunt of so much of what's happened that is horrific and cruel in this administration. That will not be the focus of the speech, but I appreciate the symbolism of being able to deliver the speech from El Paso in response to the president.
In November, you were also elected the freshman class president and in the leadership kind of position representing the class. What goes into that? What were your responsibilities?
So it's co-chair. We co-chair with Joe Neguse.
Joe Neguse from Colorado,
who's
yes.
Really wonderful. You literally sit at to get there, it's an election.
Right.
And
it's a secret ballot, right?
It's a secret
You have to be popular,
ballot.
So you're pretty popular.
Well,
right?
I don't know about that, but you definitely have to work for your votes, and you've got to talk to folks, and it's like any other race.
Mm-hmm.
You're running a race, and there were 4 of us who were running for it. And after the election, the responsibilities are essentially, you've got to be a voice for the folks you're representing, and I'm representing one of the most diverse freshman classes ever. A big class. Incredible diversity. The not just diversity in terms of gender and ethnic diversity, but really a lot of diversity of philosophy. We have, from blue dog Dems, very conservative Dems, to moderate Dems, to very socialist Democrats, basically. Mm-hmm. And so it is about trying to represent a diverse group of people and making sure that the voices are heard, so that if there are opportunities that we can seize them, if there are concerns, so that leadership is aware of them.
And how often do you meet with leadership to express what the class wants?
It's pretty frequent. Okay. So we have weekly at least 3 meetings where every single week we're, at the table with the speaker, in different groups. But as a freshman co-rep, Jonah Goose and I are at the table at all 3 of those meetings.
Okay. So you're head of the complaint department, right? You hear a lot of complaints?
Ish.
Yes. Okay, on policy, throughout a very polarizing time, obviously impeachment's going on right now, in an election year. This is historic. This hasn't happened before to a sitting president seeking re-election. In the midst of this, and I was saying earlier, I was a skeptic. I was talking to members months ago, and I wasn't sure that USMCA would get done. It did get done. Do you think there's any carryover effect for any bipartisanship in such a volatile year?
I hope so. I really do hope so. And I'm cautiously optimistic on infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
It is something we all want, and we could say the same thing about USMCA. It was something we all really wanted, and it was something that was a priority for the president. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that infrastructure is still a priority for the president. Obviously, the challenge is going to be how do you fund it, right, and exactly what gets in, because for Democrats, we want infrastructure that's reflective of our values, just like we wanted trade that was reflective of our values. So we want infrastructure that reflects the growing crisis of climate change. Mm-hmm. And so how do we build out our country's infrastructure in a way that is responsive to what we see happening with floods and with fires and with eroding coastlines? We have a very different infrastructure challenge today than we did a decade ago. Not only is everything older and in need of, in some cases not repair but replacement, mm-hmm, but we face a different environmental challenge as well. So it'll be interesting to see if we're able to get that done, but I am cautiously optimistic.
Okay, but along those lines, and that is the rub, how to pay for it. You're talking about $700+ billion with the bill that was introduced here, and the Senate has also grappled with. Really, you can agree on, both parties have shown an indication that they can agree on the content of it, for the most part, I think, but then it's the pay for it, and specifically on the freshman class, because a lot of the freshmen are nervous that they want to get to their second term. Right. Is there concern that the House might move something that would be, the pay-fors would be controversial, and then, like many other bills that have passed the House, would not pass the Senate, and then could be used against them, like, let's say there is a gas tax, and that could be a campaign ad that House Republicans wanting to get to the House could use?
I don't think you're going to see us move forward on funding an infrastructure package without Republican support.
Okay.
So I feel
and on the pay-fors in particular.
Right. Okay. So obviously it's going to be a challenge, because part of it, we have to look at the gas tax, for example, mm-hmm, which hasn't been increased in I don't know how long.
And then the Chamber of Commerce supports that.
Right.
But there are others, Americans for Tax Reform, does not.
Yeah. Exactly. We also are going to have to, frankly, take a look at the tax bill that Republicans passed and that, mm-hmm, they're so enamored of. Mm-hmm. But if we are going to rebuild America, obviously we have to pay for it. And the ballooning deficit I hope is going to at some point become alarming to Republicans, and they're going to have to reevaluate what they did. Now, the likelihood that will happen, I don't know, but if we want to get to the same place, if we have the same goal when it comes to infrastructure and helping rebuild America, something that we all can rally behind, these conversations are going to be challenging and important, but I do also believe they may be driven in part by public sentiment. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we talk about it and the more that we engage our communities and our constituents and voters, then I hope we begin to see some pressure on all of us to rethink some of those decisions, like the tax bill.
What do you think the mood is going to be during the State of the Union on Tuesday? The impeachment trial could be over, may not be. Obviously, Democrats like yourself hope this will be the last State of the Union for this president. What do you think is going to be the mood in the chamber?
I don't know. Last year there was, among the House Democrats in the chamber, there was this sense of, because so many of us were brand new, we had just been sworn in,
won the House,
this
yeah.
incredible diversity. When we first all got settled in, and all the women, we were seated together, and we were all wearing white, and it was, and there was this incredible just diversity. It was beautiful. There was this sense of elation and real joy at what we had accomplished with the elections of 2018. Well, we're a year in. We've accomplished a lot together. We have a lot left to accomplish. It's election season, so it's a little bit different. I don't know. I think the sense of unity among House Democrats is so strong, again, regardless of how diverse we are and as a caucus. And there is a real sense, I think, also of, if it weren't for us to be the firewall, to be holding the line, I don't know what would have happened last year. So, thank goodness for my colleagues. Thank goodness for those frontliners. Thank goodness for folks who flipped seats. So I think there will still be that incredible strength. Personally, last year I felt real frustration with the president's message. He's dishonest, and it's frustrating to sit and listen to someone attempt to gaslight an entire country. I won't be with my colleagues this year. I'll be in El Paso. Right. So, and that's where I'll be delivering the Democratic response in Spanish. So I'll miss being with my colleagues. I ran into Sylvia Garcia, one of our incredible House managers, a woman who I call my comadre, and hugged her, and she said, "I can't believe we're not going to be sitting together." So I'll be with them in spirit, though, but at least I won't have to be in the room. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say that? I'm sorry.
The Iowa caucus is coming up real soon. You back Better Work. Also, Texas will also, I believe it's Super Tuesday, right?
Right.
March 3rd. Will you endorse another candidate before then?
I am considering it.
Okay.
I am considering it. That's what I will say. And I will also say...
You getting a few calls about it?
Yeah, I have been getting, calls and texts and emails. And
Right.
Last night, Mayor Bloomberg was in El Paso, and he opened up his Latino outreach office in El Paso. And I have to tell you, I really appreciate people who understand the power of the border, the power of the Latino vote, and who understand that a place like El Paso is the capital of the border and is the new Ellis Island. So that meant a lot to me personally, but I have not made an endorsement, but I'm thinking about it.
Last question, immigration reform. Is that something you see could happen, really not in 2020, but in 2021 after the election, and obviously it's going to depend on who wins the presidency and who the nominee is on the Democratic side, if that person wins. But do you think that, let's say, Democrats win the White House, should that be a top priority? It
has to be. It absolutely has to be. Healthcare is still the top priority for Americans, regardless of where you live, regardless of your ethnicity. Poll after poll after poll demonstrates, and I hear it on the ground in my community as well, healthcare is number one. People, what I've heard from my constituents is that people want this issue settled. This idea of the battles in the courts to try to take away the gains that we've made. My state, unfortunately, is the state that is trying to eliminate the Affordable Care Act altogether, and the weight of the Trump administration is right behind Texas in that attempt. We've got to settle that, but immigration has to be a top priority, a top 3 priority. What this president has done, we all can agree that the immigration system in America was already badly broken. I think we all can and should agree that the Department of Homeland Security was an agency that had little oversight, little transparency, little accountability, and that's why it's been able to be used as a tool for so much cruelty. What was a broken system is now shattered, absolutely shattered into a million little pieces because of this administration. The erosions to asylum law, the absolute inhumanity, true human rights abuses that have occurred at the hands of our government. We are in a place as a country on immigration that is unrecognizable, something that we would never imagine the United States of America engaging in, ripping children from the arms of their parents, putting people in cages, treating vulnerable migrants like hardened criminals or national security threats. The next president, whether it be a Democrat, and it has to be a Democrat this year, or if, God forbid, in 4 years, is going to have a huge job. And so that has to be the focus on day one. And we have to insert the humanity and compassion back into our system that was at the very foundation of this country.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. We've run out of time. Please thank the Congresswoman for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
You did great.
Thank you.